Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of February the 13th. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could ask our Deputy City Clerk to please take roll.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Here.
Mayor Ruth Medina.
Here. And this evening I'd like to ask our San Bruno Park School District Superintendent, Stella, if she could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to this republic, which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any announcements. Let's go on to presentations. We do have 4 this evening, so a lot of information. Let's go to the first one, which is receive presentation on schools with tomorrow inside. San Bruno Park School District's vision for the 21st century, teaching and learning centers by our superintendent, Stella.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm excited to be back to speak to you again. I think I was here in September or October this past year. I'm pleased to present to you tonight the district's new vision for schools with tomorrow inside that is designed to restore the district to physical recovery and to create 21st century teaching and learning centers for San Bruno Park students for now and in the future. The district has been going through strategic planning since 2016 and has identified 4 strategic goals for the district. One is to implement 21st century teaching and learning strategies and methodologies to ensure the academic and personal success of all of our students. And as a K-8 school district, our goal is to make sure when children enter high school, they are ready to learn and be prepared for the A through G track or the college and career track that's provided at Cappuccino. We also want to, as a school district, make sure that we're engaging our parents as partners. Parents are the first educators of children, and we believe that having strong partnerships is critical to the success, starting as early as preschool and before. One of the big problems in our district right now is fiscal solvency, and so the goal of the district is to achieve and maintain fiscal solvency, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And the last piece is one of the most important pieces, is that we need to attract, retain, and develop certificated and classified staff in our district, including administrators, teachers, and our paraeducators and support staff that support all of the operations at our schools. Ultimately, our goal is to ensure that we have the fiscal resources to provide an equitable educational program that supports our community for today and tomorrow. And this is the challenge, is having those services and providing equitable to our students, some who come to us with great needs. Someone forward the slide. Oh, there we go. I didn't hit the button hard enough. So, San Bruno Park School District has 6 elementary schools. The schools are aged between 52 and 76 years old that were built for a different generation of students. The jobs and careers of yesterday are not those of today, and San Bruno children today and tomorrow deserve learning centers that prepare them for success in the world that they live in now and for tomorrow. We have some challenges. Our challenges are that we've got issues with our physical health. We have schools that are under-enrolled in poor condition. We have many open classrooms at our schools. And the 21st century educational program does not meet the current design of our schools. The district has been pouring funding into Band-Aids to maintain antiquated schools, and dollars that can be used to implement new programs and increased compensation for teachers and staff is being spent on these Band-Aids. The district is not right-sized. The current and projected enrollment over decades and into the future are out of sync with the state funding model, which is based on how elementaries now should enroll between 400 and 600 students. We have 6 schools that are under-enrolled, 6 elementary schools. Tomorrow evening, the Board of Trustees will vote on recommendations from the district's Surplus Facilities Committee that will include the consolidation of 2 of the 6 schools into 4 schools. El Crystal, effective June this year, and Rolling Wood, in 2 to 3 years, will be declared as surplus property. And so it's important to understand that part of this plan for us to move to 21st century teaching and learning is that we have to become more efficient as a school district. So the closure of the 2 campuses and the modernization and rebuilding of the campuses will help us to realize at least $300,000 per year per campus savings across the district. What we have not calculated in here is actually the cost for us that we're spending on maintaining the antiquated campuses. So the anticipated cost, this is the low end of $300,000 per year. This is a picture of San Bruno, and we know that our city is changing. Consolidation is not an easy topic for us to talk about, but our city, as you can see, we have YouTube here now, there's the transit corridor, the downtown revitalization, there's non-school district property that's being developed, and we have multi-generational diverse community. But if you look all around us, all around the community, you see that our high school has been upgraded. They have IB programs. They have a music program, Digital Arts Academy. Bayshore Elementary just designed a K-8 school that they're opening. It's all modern. South San Francisco's modernizing, Pacifica's modernizing, but we have not. So for us as San Bruno City, for us to change what we're doing for our students means that we have to make some tough decisions. We need to be able to prepare our students to be leaders in the world at the gateway that we sit right by San Francisco Airport, YouTube, the high school, our college, and now it's time for us to move forward collectively. So this particular slide really kind of describes the challenge that we have. Our average elementary school in San Bruno Park enrolls at 300, but the state funds us at 400 to 600 students. And so what's really critical is that we're out of sync in our district with the funding models for California schools. So to take care of these and increase our efficiency as a school district as part of our fiscal recovery plan is for us to take advantage of the space, consolidate the schools, free up capital so that we can use that to fund programs and fund other obligations that the district has. So consolidation, a lot of times people say, well, you're going to consolidate and now you're going to, modernize the schools, but what about my child who's a 3rd grader? How is this going to affect them? What's going to happen to them? Well, this is the challenge for us as a school district is because so much of this work is thinking out what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years as we finish this project. The first thing is that as a district, we offer STEM at one school. What our plan is to expand the STEM program, or the 21st Century Teaching and Learning, so that we make STEM education, and we will brand it probably STEM or STEAM or STREAM or whatever the logo is that's out there, but it really is 21st Century Teaching and Learning, basic skills that the children need to have. We're going to expand that across the district. So we're going to move from 6 elementary schools to 4, and 2 of those schools will have a specific targeted focus on STEM at a much different level than the base program in the district. The other thing we have is that with many of our schools that are under-enrolled, we have combo classes. At one school in particular, we have a teacher who's teaching 2nd, 3rd, and 5th grade all in one classroom. That is not an effective way to teach Common Core. It's a lot of work for this particular teacher, and she's doing a fantastic job. I've been in her classroom, and I'm amazed with her ability. However, the children are split up. They're not with their grade level peers because they're in this combination class. The other piece about having larger elementary schools, and we're talking about adding 1 classroom per grade level when we're expanding the school sites, is that we will have the ability to differentiate and support students at a different level. So currently, if there's only 1 or 2 teachers and you have students of varying needs in your classroom, it's difficult to divide the students up to provide some students with more intense services or to accelerate those students who are ready. So by having another classroom, a 3rd classroom at a grade level, now you can really do some cool things by resorting the children, providing English language services to our English learners or our students who are English only, and have a really nice tight program that we could replicate across the district. So the other thing is that when you're operating 6 schools, and of course you allocate funding for your schools by student, but when you're dividing it up among 6 schools, there's a little bit of money everywhere, but if you bring the schools together, now you have a larger pot of money and you can be more efficient with the money because the money follows the students. For our teachers, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is providing opportunity for teachers to come together and plan in professional learning communities, to provide professional development to entire grade levels. And so when you have small schools and you have 6 different schools with 6 different bell schedules and 6 different dismissal times, trying to bring the staff together on a Thursday afternoon to offer professional development is very challenging. And so part of improving the outcomes for our students is improving the teaching and learning. And you do that by giving the teachers opportunity to collaborate together in a structured way, looking at student data and planning lessons around that. And then the other part of this is that when we do this consolidation and we expand the school sites as a temporary basis, we will be bringing in larger. Currently our classrooms are at about 860 or 840 square feet, larger temporary housing in the interim, 960 to 1,040 square foot classrooms that have air conditioning. And for any of you who were here this past fall, it was quite warm, and none of our schools have climate control in the summertime. So during this process, some of the students may have to go into brand new portables, but they're going to have air conditioning, and that's kind of a benefit for the folks who are assigned to those particular classrooms. So as I mentioned earlier, our schools were built in the early 40s. Allen was built in 1941. I think the reality of that is that in 1941 we did not have Americans with Disabilities Act. And so if you walk on the Allen campus, as Marty Medina was there with us when we did our facilities tour as a community member to see the school, you can see that there are a lot of issues with accessibility for our special needs students. And so I think it's important to point out is that as the school district, we are addressing the needs of all of the children in our community, and we currently cannot offer all of the programs at all the schools because we don't have the ability to place special education students at every school because of this accessibility issue. And the challenge is as a school district is that we can no longer band-aid a school that was built in 1941. A 1941 school, if we want to do any repairs to it, including changing the shade structures that are on the passageways, we actually have to go to the Department of State Architects, and they will no longer allow us to do that. So the campus itself is starting to show its age, and so any modernization is impossible to do because we cannot get it through the state architect. So the school would have to be rebuilt. There's some other schools that we have. Bel Air has been modernized, although it was built in 1952. Part of the campus was modernized. And John Muir also does that say 60? 1960, I don't have my glasses on, 1960. Portola was a great year, 1964. And you can see Rollingwood and Parkside. Some of the schools have been modernized, and we had some modernization projects that happened over the years, but it really is time for us to do something serious about the schools. So with that in mind, let's talk about what schools with tomorrow inside look like. So what's interesting is that we've actually been out looking at these schools. We've been out looking at modern new elementary schools, schools that have been expanded, where their current facilities have been modernized on the inside and they've added additional classrooms or a new multipurpose room. And this is the world that we need to create for our students. So we need to have classrooms where we can implement Common Core and next generation science standards. We need to have classrooms that offer the opportunity for students to create and collaborate, to have a place where they can communicate it using 21st century tools. The challenge we have at Parkside, for instance, is that we have purchased this wonderful new ELA curriculum for our students, but yet the bandwidth at the school cannot allow all the students to be on a Chromebook at the same time. And it's the way the building was structured, so we have to go in and we have to fix those things because they can't access the 21st century curriculum. The teachers have to find workarounds. And critical thinking. Critical thinking means you have to put children in scenarios and in situations where they actually have to solve a problem. And they don't do that with a worksheet. That is where you have a STEM lab or you have a makerspace and you give them a challenge. And challenge-based learning is one of the the topics out there that you hear a lot about in education. But really making sure our children are critical thinkers and they're coming up with solutions is important for us as we're trying to develop the next group of workers that are going to be going out in the next 15 to 20 years into the workforce. And then thinking about the physical space for our students. Schools now today have spaces that are flexible. So you're not, a classroom isn't just a classroom all the time. You could open up the wall and you could open it up into a multi-purpose room. So we keep those things in mind as we're designing schools. You'll notice that as in some of the pictures that I'm about to show to you is that the classrooms, you'll see that there's movable furniture, less things built in, lots of white spaces on the white walls on the in the classroom, and you'll see that we also have great lighting. This particular picture on the top is a classroom in Corte Madre, which is a kindergarten classroom that actually has a wall that opens up. It's just a nano door, and they can expand that kindergarten classroom into a double classroom, and they have actually a breakout center for teachers too. And you'll see there's another picture of it on the bottom right-hand side, where the teachers can take kids in and do learning centers. And so you take two classrooms, you open it up, and now the two kindergarten teachers can collaborate together and have some really great activities for the students. This classroom opens up to a kindergarten-only play area, and they have the kindergarten-only restrooms right there in that space. So it's a really nice early learning environment. You'll also notice that everything has been dropped to kindergarten eye level, so we don't have the children looking where they do, but it's actually at their level. And also the floors, the flooring in the classrooms is eco-friendly and non-toxic, so we make sure that that is appropriate for the students. But the thing that also to look at as you're looking at these particular classrooms is that everything is movable. The classroom on the top in this picture right here is a specialties classroom. This classroom is used for music and art and for science and multiple things, and it actually has an entrance from the outside of the building, so if they wanted to come in on the weekend and do a performance, the kids could gather in there, and then the parents are waiting in the multipurpose room, which is right here. So this is Corte Madre, the Cove School, which was one of the schools we went to visit. And the bottom picture, right around where 9 o'clock is that classroom I showed you. And this is the multipurpose room, lunchroom area for the school. So the top picture is an outside view looking in. You'll notice there is an outdoor learning space, an outdoor eating area, but the wall basically opens up. And if any of you have been to any of our elementary schools, when they have an event, it's really crowded in there with all the mamas with their strollers and stuff, but they've accommodated that by the way they've designed this building. So, you can have a mom outside with a stroller roll up the door, and they can actually see what's going on and hear what's going on and be a part of that, and it helps with access. And this particular school, this is where you enter into the school, so the challenge we have sometimes is getting people to enter into one place and have secure space, entrance and exit at our schools. And so this particular school, when you walk into this room from the outside. The offices are there, the cafeteria is there, the multipurpose room, and then you enter through there and go out into the main campus. And so it provides a nice kind of central location and meeting area that would be available both to the school and to the community. So we want to create schools where the community can come in and use that space as they would like to. And the way this is designed makes that possible for us. One of the things we don't do well in San Bruno Park is use our two stories because, we have a small plot of land at many of our schools, so we're looking at what could we do to use the airspace. And so part of our thinking around the schools is how do we maximize the land and create spaces where we have outdoors inside so the kids can see the gardens and whatnot, and how do we use those spaces to work and provide a program for the whole child, because this is not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. This is also about fostering the development of a child whose mindset is going to be successful in the 21st century. And so part of that is also being environmentally conscious of the community. So this is our plan. Our plan is to, in our schools as we modernize, is to upgrade our science labs and make sure that we have STEM and science space at all our schools, that we have design and collaboration spaces for teachers and for students, that we upgrade our technology, our kitchens and our multi-purpose rooms. Our kitchens, currently we're providing prepackaged food to the students, but the community that's been working on the facilities visioning plan is talk about what about fresh food? What about fresh meals to the students? Could we make that happen? And so we're looking at that. Making sure we have handicapped access at all of our schools and we can serve special education and general education students side by side. We have office spaces for those individuals who come and provide ancillary services. We ensure that we have safe and security and a path of travel that doesn't require children to walk across a car's lane of travel as they're dropping off students. We create flexible and multiple use spaces because as our needs change, those spaces might need to change, and so we're planning for that. We plan for student growth because eventually they will come. And so as we're beginning to plan those, we want to make sure that we have a plan for if we need to add another building or drop a portable, or we need to look at, any of those, drop a portable at a building. So we're planning for those kinds of things as we design the schools. Making sure that outdoor spaces are appropriate for the students and for the community. A lot of our fields are not usable because, we have inhabitants named gophers living there, and so we want to make sure that we're able to use those fields. So we have to figure out how we're going to address that. And of course, if you've been to Parkside, you know parking and traffic, and any of our schools, we need to address parking and traffic so that people can get in and out of the school in a safe way. So the challenge for us now is, how do we pay for this, right? Yeah, exactly. So we have to, there's a two-step process. And I was going to say the two-step, like in Texas, we used to two-step when we would dance. But here, this is a two-step process for getting to the modernization. The first thing is that the district has to get ourselves righted financially. And so part of that is getting our fiscal house in order. And so we believe that by consolidating our schools down, we'll be able to free up assets there that will allow us to use some of those funds to provide for the funding for the modernization. We have a facility planning team right now, and we have them working on creating this master vision document, which will be going to the board on the 14th of March, which will show sort of like what this might all look like. And then as we begin the process, we have to prep and we have to sell the surplus property. So tomorrow night at the board meeting, you're going to if those of you who attend, you will hear that there's a proposal to bring El Crystal, Rollingwood, and Hesselgren up for those two schools for consolidation, and then for the sale of surplus property. And some of those properties, really don't serve the need of the district. Those three properties don't serve the need of the district, because we could relocate the students and use that property, the funds from the sale, to help spearhead the modernization. And then we began planning for a bond measure, and this is a critical piece, because in San Bruno, it's been 19 years since a bond measure, a tax measure, has been passed to support the educational programs here in terms of facilities. And the challenge for us is that each year we wait to move forward with this, the cost increases. And so what we want to do is bring this bond measure to the public pending the findings that we have from our bond planning committee, and in November 2018. And then from that, use the proceeds of the sales, braid that with the funding from the bond measure, and then move forward with the modernization expansion. And this is going to take some time, because as you know, nothing goes fast here in the United States of America. I'm making a joke because, of the tone of China and how fast things get approved and built. But there is a process. And so the process is that it takes about 18 months for things to go through the planning and the Department of State Architect. And then the planning would be then to modernize and expand the 4 remaining schools, finish Parkside, and then we would move the maintenance, operation, and transportation and the district office off of Hesselgren, sell that property, and then find a new home. So that's kind of the plan for us as a school district, and I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming out. I know it's been a lot of work. You've had a lot of volunteered individuals from the 7-Eleven committee who put a lot of effort and time and passion, frankly, in trying to wrestle with what is, what exists, and trying to see it through, and looking forward, looking ahead, and I think that's critical. So, as mayor and on behalf of the city council, we want to thank you for continuing. Okay. The vice mayor has a question.
Oh, okay, yes.
It's all right, I'm used to getting interrupted. Go ahead.
I thought you were wrapping it up, and I didn't was going to get an opportunity. I just thought I wanted to hear you clearly that you indicated that with schools less than 500 pupils, you're not getting state funding.
No, we are getting state funding. We're not maximizing
efficiencies
of the way the state funds schools. Yeah, so as schools we know in California are underfunded. I mean, that's a reality, and the fact is that there is no local parcel tax to provide any funding to our schools. So therefore, we rely on whatever we generate through the state. Right now, we just flipped into basic aid, so we got a little bit of additional funding this year because of the tax value, the collection of taxes here in the community. But we anticipate, with the way the governor is funding the schools in 2018-19, that we will flip back into the revenue limit funding formula for California. So that is not enough for us to really provide 6 small elementary schools. I mean, the overhead cost of that is significant. And a lot of it is really related to, we have additional personnel and so on at the schools that we could consolidate them and have them all under one roof. At one time, the school district shared principals between 2 school sites, and that's not efficient to do. So, and we are sitting on some very valuable land. The city is pretty much built out. Everything is zoned R1, and knowing what the birth rates are, and we've done some projections around that, what the birth rates are, we don't anticipate significant gains in enrollment. But we are planning should that happen. And so that's what we're hoping the voters will support us in our master plan for the modernization.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Anyone else? Our superintendent? If not, Stella, then thank you very, very much.
Thank
Appreciate it, and good luck on the 15th.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time. Our second presentation this evening is to receive a presentation from the San Mateo County on the, quote, Get Us Moving, unquote, program regarding transportation funding.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. My name is Jim Hartnett. I am the CEO and General Manager of the San Mateo County Transit District. With me tonight is our Director of Governmental Affairs, Casey Fromson. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about our Get Us Moving San Mateo County efforts. As you know, congestion is on everybody's minds. It affects all of us, both in our daily quality of life as well as the economic vitality of our communities, our county, and our region. The civic and elected leadership in San Mateo County in the 1970s banded together to form and put on the ballot the enabling legislation to establish the San Mateo County Transit District. Since the 1970s, the district has provided bus and paratransit service throughout the county, and has become a leader overall in congestion relief efforts and trying to keep us moving, as we know we have to get us moving again with the current congestion. In the 1980s, the civic leadership again and elected leadership in the county banded together to put on the ballot and form the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. And I'm so pleased and thankful that, Mayor, that you have joined the Transportation Authority and provided your insight and leadership to that, which is so important to all of us in San Mateo County. The Transit District became the managing agent for the Transportation Authority in the 1980s, in addition to providing the continued bus and paratransit service and shuttle and associated services. But there's a lot more to do. As you know, Southern Pacific, that provided the rail service throughout the region and from San Francisco to San Jose and on to Gilroy, decided to get out of the passenger business. And it is through the leadership of the elected and civic leaders in San Mateo County that a joint powers agency was formed to save the commuter rail service. And it was in fact San Mateo County through the Transit District that provided the investment to purchase the right-of-way so that there would be continued rail service. Without San Mateo County's leadership, there would be no Caltrain today. And as you know, there's a lot of people who ride Caltrain today. And in fact, by about 9 o'clock tonight, over 1 million miles will not have been driven in our region just today because of those folks who ride on Caltrain. It is an important element of our congestion relief. And if it wasn't for San Mateo County's leadership and the San Mateo County Transit District's investment in the purchase of the right-of-way, there would be no Caltrain today. There also wouldn't be a BART in San Mateo County either. BART, as you know, is a district that is formed by multiple counties around the Bay Area. San Mateo County is not a member of that district. However, BART is in San Mateo County due to an investment arrangement whereby the Transit District invested money in the capital cost and initial operating cost of bringing BART into San Mateo County. With the investment in Caltrain and the investment in BART, we probably have invested both from reserves and borrowings over $500 million over a period of time for congestion relief and promoting transit in San Mateo County and the region. But with that investment comes strains on our financial services. The transit district was not set up initially in the 1970s to provide rail service or to bring BART into San Mateo County, but there was nobody else to do it. And so it was done because the collective leadership in the county felt it was very important to do. Well, there is more now we need to do to keep us and get us moving in San Mateo County, and that's why we're here today, to talk to you about our efforts to engage the elected leadership, the civic leadership, and the communities in charting a future for our transit district and the services that we provide and the investments that are needed to be made in San Mateo County. As many of you know, our bus and paratransit riders for the district are primarily dependent upon the bus and our paratransit vehicles for their mobility. Most of the riders earn less than $50,000 a year and don't have alternatives. The paratransit riders don't have, because of their disabilities and often because of their income, the ability to get to their medical appointments, get to those things that they need to do in their daily lives and depend upon our paratransit service. All this comes at a significant cost, and to continue to provide the services and sustain what we do to get people where they need to go, when they need to get there, and to try to provide further congestion relief, we know we need to do more. And so we're here to talk about our efforts to do that, and Casey will give a brief presentation on that.
Thank you, Jim. That was a good segue to their efforts today, and we'll give you a little background on that and what our next steps are. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. I think Jim spoke to why we need this. Obviously, transportation is one of the major issues in our region, and there are lots of challenges, but we also have some solutions, and we're going to talk about that. The Get Us Moving effort is led by the San Mateo County Transit District and the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. And then we also have lots of engagement from different stakeholders that will talk about how they've been part of this process. But this really lets anyone in the county make their voices heard on what they think we should have as a part of an expenditure plan or just what we should have as part of our program moving forward. A little background for those that don't have all of the ins and outs of the different transportation agencies. You got a good history from Jim on this, but the San Mateo County Transit District, just to repeat that again, manages Samtrans, the paratransit services, Caltrain, and the Measure A funds that administer local transportation funding. There's also CCAG, which approves countywide plans, and Commute.org that collaborates with transit agencies, employers, and cities to provide alternatives to driving alone. There is lots of people projected to grow to San Mateo County, and you can see some of the statistics here. An important one is the population age over 65 is expected to grow 137% by 2040. What that translates into is a lot of individuals needing paratransit help, and the ridership there you can see is expected to grow to over 1 million expected rides in 2040. So we need to be planning not only for the challenges we have today, but looking ahead at the future to see where our needs going to be in the future and how can we be best prepared for that. Again, on some of the challenges, which I don't think I need to tell anyone that traffic congestion is terrible today. In fact, there was a report that just came out that said that the annual delay per peak hour for a commuter is 67 hours. That's a lot of time to be stuck in traffic. It's a lot of time also to be standing on Caltrain right now if you're riding in the peak hour. It's a lot of time to be worried about how you can get to where you need to go if you're a bicyclist or a pedestrian, looking around at what's aging in our infrastructure and really seeing what more we need to do to enhance that first and last mile to make sure we have a seamless transportation network in the county so people can get to and from where they need to go. We do have some ideas on how to address some of these major concerns and challenges. You see some of them up here, everything from senior and youth mobility plans, local streets and road investment, express buses in different parts of the county, and we have many different options up there. And also, as everyone knows, solutions require investment. So on this slide, we have a few examples of what those investments include. Caltrain and Samtrans operation and maintenance, some of the major programs that are out there. These are not insignificant dollars, and it really does take a large investment from different sources in order to make these projects a reality. Some folks may realize that we have a measure on the books right now. It's called Measure A. And you can see on that left-hand column that the money has been spent well and on a lot of good projects. Grade separations, which allow the train and the rail to be separated, which makes it safer and also allows for better local traffic flow. But you can also see we have 13, there's 29 remaining in the county. There's also major projects that we can be doing on our freeways, paratransit needs that we spoke about, and the local needs that we know from different cities and regions in San Mateo will really add up if we don't continue to think about how we invest in these projects. Senate Bill 1 and Regional Measure 3 are both other potential sources of funding, and we certainly are going to rely on many different funding sources to get to where we need to go. But SB 1, which is a state bill, is threatened for repeal right now. And Regional Measure 3, you can see that there is some money that will be in there for these major projects. But at the total cost of the project, it's not going to be enough alone. And we really will have to, again, look at our local investments to control our destiny and what we want to have in our community and in our county. And so this speaks to what we're doing right now and the education around a potential solution we have. Assemblymember Mullen put on the ballot, or sorry, he didn't put on the ballot, he helped pass into law AB 1613, which would allow a half-cent sales tax and provide significant funds over a period of time that you can see there. We'll need to go through the proper channels to get that to the point where we put it on the ballot, but it could be placed on the ballot in November of 2018. So what we're doing right now is we're developing an expenditure plan, and we are going to need the help from the communities and this body and organizations to weigh in to let us know what your priorities are. So if we do get to that point in November 18, we've heard from the communities and we have something that resonates with them. There's several different ways you can participate. One of them is filling out this survey. There's plenty in the back room, and the council also has one there. If you haven't already, feel free to mail it in. And we've gotten great response already. 11,000 people have mailed in their survey to let us know what their results are. We also have it online for our website in case you prefer that method. You can come to our public meetings. We're coming to public meetings as well to hear directly from you. Social media, digital, TV spots, we're out there, and we're hoping that you are hearing that we're interested in your feedback, and we really do want to hear from you. In addition to the broader public outreach, we have gathered key technical stakeholders. We know that there are plenty of experts out there. You know your own communities best, and we've convened them together. The technical advisory group made up of public works directors, and your own Jimmy Tan participates in that. And stakeholder advisory groups, we're bringing in different partners from the private side, but also the community groups. We have a process where we've identified goals of what we hope for with this program, but we need to work with the different stakeholders to develop that expenditure plan. And then final steps would be having the Samtrans board put the measure on the ballot with concurrence of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. This is highlighting what the goals are. I'm sorry they're cut off here, but relieve traffic congestion countywide, invest in financially sustainable public transportation systems that increase ridership, provide quality transit options for everyone, embraces innovation to create more transportation choices, aligns with the Samtrans business plan, prioritizes environmental sustainable solutions, promotes economic vitality, maximizes the opportunity to leverage those investments in the other sources that we have out there, enhance safety and public health, and lastly, invest in repair and maintain the existing and future infrastructure that we have out there. The big question is, what is in that final expenditure plan? We don't have that finalized yet. That's why we're going through this process to get feedback, make sure we've heard from as many different voices as we can, so that we're developing a plan that makes sense for our county for now and looking at our future needs. Some key inputs, a call for projects. We asked all of the cities in the county to provide some input on what they think the needs are, so we can get kind of a scale of what that size of need is out there. 122 projects totaling $12 billion in need. That's far exceeding what we potentially have with this measure, but it speaks to that there really is a need out there. We're also getting feedback from that technical and stakeholder group. Public survey data, that's going to be helpful. These mailers let us know what some of the priorities are. We will be doing polling, and then the governing board input, exactly like coming here today to get feedback for the board, is critical for this process. We expect that the expenditure plan will be rolled out in the next several months, and so we'll have a draft expenditure plan where we'll likely come back around to all of the same cities and county entities, making sure that we socialize the document and make sure that we got it right. Is there anything we missed on it? We'll also have some online tools to help the public understand, well, if I want to really fund bike and pedestrian categories, what would that mean? How much money would be left over? And help really understand the complexities and the challenges sometimes of dividing up money to make sure you're meeting the right resources. Again, we would try to finalize that plan by June 2018 for it to be potentially on the November ballot. And the last one is just how you can help. Please let your networks, your neighbors know about this. We found that we get spikes in the online participation when board members tweet about it, when community members talk about it on Nextdoor. We see active social echoing is what it's called, when the engaged citizens reach out and let them know this is something that's important and you should get your voice involved in the process. So that's really why we're here today, is just to tell people that this process is out here. We want your engagement, and we will go wherever you think there's other groups that would like to hear this information as well. We have a couple town halls coming up. We've already had 2. These are open to anyone. If it's convenient for you to make it to Menlo Park or South San Francisco, the dates are right there. February 15th, which is Thursday, and South San Francisco will be on February 22nd. Last one is just please spread the word. Here's a couple places where you can get more information about the process and fill out the surveys, and places to keep coming back to as we move forward with this process. We'll update them with the expenditure plan and where we are. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from council? Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you next month. All right, next presentation we have, as I see our 4 individuals are here. We'd like to recognize 4 individuals for their actions in addressing an immediate threat posed by an armed suspect on January 1st, 2018. Not a way to bring in the new year, but you're here and we're appreciative and thank you. Chief.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Thank you for allowing us to take time. I know the agenda is a busy one this evening, and we appreciate your time. In the early morning hours of January 1st, 2018, Daryl Sepulveda, Ernesto Martinez Medrano, Manuel Macias Sandoval, and Jennifer Andrea Leon Sanchez were attending a New Year's Eve party on Atlantic Avenue in our city. During the course of the party, another attendee began to cause a disturbance and concerned others at the party. Due to his negatively impacting the gathering, the host of the party instructed this individual to leave. The subject became upset when told to leave and threatened to return to the party with a firearm and shoot other attendees. A short time later, this subject did in fact return to the party in possession of a shotgun. He knocked on the garage door of the residence and demanded to be allowed back inside. Realizing that this subject was holding a firearm, Mr. Martinez Medrano and Mr. Sepulveda immediately developed a plan to disarm the subject. Upon opening the garage door, Mr. Martinez Medrano and Mr. Sepulveda grabbed the firearm away from the subject and then detained him until police officers responded to the scene. Recognizing what had just occurred, Ms. Leon Sanchez and Mr. Macias Sandoval immediately provided assistance to Mr. Sepulveda and Mr. Martinez Medrano in safely detaining the subject until San Bruno police officers arrived and took him safely into custody. While the police department generally discourages individuals from placing themselves in harm's way and always advocates that 911 be dialed in the event of an emergency, there was clearly an exigency in this instance that required immediate action. The actions of these 4 individuals likely prevented a critical incident from becoming much worse. On behalf of the men and women of the San Bruno Police Department, I commend and thank Daryl Sepulveda, Ernesto Martinez Medrano, Manuel Macias Sandoval, and Jennifer Andrea Leon Sanchez for their initiative, swift action, and courage in addressing and mitigating a very dangerous situation. And I think, as you can see by the staff here from the police department, we truly do appreciate the effort on this evening, and it did have an impact to safely resolve a situation that could have been much worse. So we have letters of appreciation for each of the four individuals who participated in addressing this critical incident. We'd like to thank them. So if you don't mind coming up. Congratulations. Thanks.
I want to say to the four, and we're going to applaud because you well deserve it. Some of you came quite a distance to be here this evening. I know that. So appreciate that, very much so. This was something that the city manager and the chief reached out to me and felt that this was an exceptional thing that you all did, and that it was the correct and appropriate thing. As you may know, we're known with the city with the heart, and you went beyond that night to protect those that were participating in the event, and to put yourself as a secondary and worrying about all your friends and family that were there. So as the department said, and that's why our officers are here, and as mayor, on behalf of this community, on behalf of this council, we personally want to thank you for your exceptional bravery and what you did. And we, from the bottom of our heart, thank you.
I've been asked to introduce each one of these individuals individually, so we actually know who you are.
Please.
So when I call your name, if you could step forward, Daryl Sepulveda, Ernesto Martinez Medrano, Jennifer, I think and who am I missing? Manuel Macias Sandoval. Thank you very much for what you did. It truly is a meaningful day.
Again, thank you. Drive home safe. Our next presentation, we're going to receive a presentation of Community Grant Awards from the San Bruno Community Foundation from the President, Nancy Krause.
Good evening, Mayor Medina, members of the City Council. The foundation is now in its 5th year since being created by the city as a nonprofit to manage the $70 million restitution settlement from PG&E consequent to the fire explosion tragedy in our community 7 years ago. Through annual reports to the council and the foundation's annual report, which is mailed to every address in San Bruno, you and the community are kept apprised of how the foundation is managing the investment. One of the foundation's endeavors is the Community Grants Program, through which we award $200,000 annually to a variety of agencies and groups whose programs and activities benefit San Bruno. The foundation's community grant funding cycle for 2017 concluded in December with a generous donation coming forth from YouTubeGoogle.org in the amount of $100,000 to enhance the pot, so to speak, thus enabling San Bruno Community Foundation to award $300,000 in community grants to 23 projects. It is my pleasure this evening to present 2 of these grant awards to the city. The first is in the amount of $5,000 to help support the Narita, Japan Sister City Exchange Program, which offers a cultural education exchange between San Bruno and Narita Middle School students. Parkside youth who participate in the experience gain lifelong memories, friends, and a deeper understanding and appreciation of another culture's rich history and traditions. The exchange program has been active in San Bruno since 1990. The grant will offset the city's costs associated with hosting the March delegation from Narita and also provide scholarship assistance to a Parkside student who otherwise would not be able to participate for financial reasons. The second grant is in the amount of $1,600 to install a bike fix-it station to be located at the San Bruno BART station to aid cyclists with their bike maintenance needs. The city's transit corridor plan encourages multimodal transportation options through the plan area and anticipates more cyclists using BART station as redevelopment occurs. Fix-it stations are becoming more common, with 2 already at BART stations in San Francisco and Walnut Creek. The project requires a one-time cost to purchase, ship, and install the bike fix-it station, which the city will install outside the paid entrance to San Bruno's BART station, and will continue its discussions with BART about maintenance of the station. With this grant, the foundation is pleased to support the vision of the walk and bike plan adopted by the city in 2017. Mayor Medina, may I present you with the checks?
Jim O'Leary's already making a move. Thank you very much to the board. Sorry. Hold on. Okay. Got it? Okay. Thank you again to the board. Deputy, Vicki?
Next item, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested.
Any action from council on the items?
Move. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No? The ayes have it. Acting City Clerk Vicki Hache, next please.
Item 6, public hearing. There are none tonight. Item 7, report of commissions, boards, and committees. And tonight, receive annual report from the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee.
Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of our City Council. Tonight we're going to receive the annual report from the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee. So there's our committee. I'm going to, I won't call out all of us individually, but I do want to call out our staff support. Jimmy Tan, Michael Cato, and Michael Blundell, and all the staff of their department work very, very hard to bring the matters before us and complete and detailed reports and everything that we need in order to do our work, and we appreciate them very, very much. So what the TSPC does, our job, is to review and recommend actions to you, the City Council, on traffic calming, parking, and local traffic issues. We also review larger programs to help with traffic and parking in the city, and including the parking restriction application process, the traffic calming toolkit, and crosswalk installation guidelines. All of these enable staff to deal with more routine things on a regular basis and free up more time for us to spend on some of the larger issues affecting our city. We engage the community through mailers, our city website. We have city staff contact info at the end of the presentation, which I'll put up there. We have our monthly public meetings, And over this past year, we had 136 residents and business owners attending our meetings. And you can see there in that picture how riveted everybody was. So in 2017, we got a lot done this year. We recommended some parking restrictions and changes on Santa Lucia Avenue, extended blue curb, red curbs on San Mateo Avenue and Linden Avenue, and on another one on Linden for a PG&E vault. A follow-up study for overnight parking at Bel Air Elementary, red curb at Shelter Creek for another utility cabinet. We removed some parking restrictions and to free up parking on the east side of Hensley Avenue. We recommended a police vehicle parking stall on City Park Way. That's going to be near the new satellite police station in the rec center. And also a yellow curb zone on City Parkway. And also we reviewed parking restrictions on the 700 block of Cherry. We also recommended safety improvements on San Mateo Avenue, some striping and signing improvements on Crystal Springs between Crestmore and Cunningham, installation of rapid reflecting flashing beacons, I think it is, near Portola and Parkside School. The ones for Parkside just went up and hopefully are doing some good there in front of Parkside where it's quite treacherous. And put in some no U-turn restrictions on Huntington near Target. It keeps going. We have some struck restrictions on Herman, some intersection safety improvements on Susan. That's actually on the agenda for you guys later tonight. Some sign improvements and signal modifications on Crystal Springs and Cunningham, and also lots of time spent trying to deal with trucks coming off of the Highway 101 off ramps into our neighborhoods. So lots of signage and lots of discussion about that ongoing issue. We also recommended for the Highway 35 widening that came here, the establishing of an all-way stop sign control on San Mateo Avenue at Genevan. That was a long time coming, that one. Establishing all-way stop at College Drive and Marisol as part of the residential development that's going on up there. And we're also working on a detailed traffic analysis regarding mid-block crossings on Cherry Avenue near Bay Hill. We also reviewed the installation of a crosswalk at Genevan and Redwood. So that was a lot in 2017. Our goals in 2018 are to complete work on a joint parking subcommittee to develop a recommendation for a residential parking permit program. There's been a lot of work put in this past year on that one. We had a lively meeting in this very room just last week. So we'll be presenting to the council in an upcoming meeting the results of that. We're going to evaluate standards for one-way streets. We're going to review and implement improvements by the citywide intersection safety study. And we're going to hopefully streamline the protocol for neighborhood traffic calming requests. So in order to submit a request to the TSPC, I love that it says write a letter. Make sure to put a stamp on it and everything. You put together what is your issue and problem, and your suggested solution, and your contact info, and get it to the TSPC at City Hall. There's the address if you do want to snail mail it, but way down at the bottom, there's the email that everyone probably would use. You can also hand deliver it. And then to contact the Department of Public Works, there's the phone number and email address to report traffic engineering issues. And that is the end of our presentation, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Questions for Chair Hamilton?
I just wanted to say thank you to you and your committee members for all the hours of work that you put in. I've attended a number of your meetings, and I appreciate your work effort to make our city a little safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And John is here, who's on the committee, and Tom, on behalf of the council, thank you, and to the committee for their work. And yes, I was at that lively meeting, and but it was good feedback, right? And it was good to have folks come and be able to express. So you folks have done a lot, and we are still here at the council trying to streamline some of that process with the TSPC and Public Works to get these things through in a more shall we say, faster pace as possible, because there's a lot of questions that have come up from the community. They have a lot of interests, and I know you have the toolbox, as we call it, and you have really streamlined the process of going through things. So it is easier than it ever has been for a member of the community who has a concern or an interest to reach out, go to the meeting, contact Public Works, and be able to be heard and see if something can be done. So thank you again for all the work and the effort that you and your group does.
Thank you.
Item 8, public comment. Items not on the agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. I do have one speaker card from Elmer Madrid, if you'd like to come up now. And anyone else that would like to address the council but hasn't filled out a card, you're welcome to speak. Just come to the back here and you can speak after Mr. Madrid.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, my name is Elmer Madrid. I am a 2-year Vietnam veteran. I went through a long process of PTSD, and I made it my mission now that I want all veterans to know what is available out there for them. And so what I've done is I've started a barbecue at the VA clinic. Today we barbecued chicken there. I was a little bit disappointed with the turnout, but I understand that, you know, my communication skills, I really didn't advertise it very good, and that's what I'm doing here right now. I'm trying to reach out to you, the City Council and the Mayor, and members here. The average is still 22 veterans a day committing suicide. 22 a day. So you multiply that by a week, that's 150. You know, by a year. I think you guys get the idea. We're having a lot of problems with veterans. I'm happy to announce that the Veterans Administration in our area is outstanding. So because of this, I have made it my goal to go out and try to get every single veteran here in the northern county together. We have no venues, and so kind of it's to the point where you almost have to beg for services, and I want to change that. I want to change it so that to demonstrate that veterans don't want handouts either. They be happy to do whatever they have to do to be part of our first responder community. So anyway, if you would let everybody who is a veteran know that on the second Tuesday of every month, we have a free barbecue for all veterans. It starts at 11:30 and it goes to about 1 o'clock. There's no charge. We do have a donation jar if you would like to donate something to it. We've been pretty fortunate that I've been able to, I've got a few sponsors, and so we have plenty of food, and if you're a veteran, please come on down and try to participate and gain in the knowledge of what it's going to take to help support veterans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anybody else who wished to speak this evening? If not?
Item 9, conduct of business. Item A, receive oral report and provide comments on the development of the conceptual design for the new recreation center and aquatic center.
City
Mr.
Manager.
Mayor, members of the City Council, it's my great pleasure tonight to introduce, and let me, before I do that, I apologize for the length of the many presentations. I think this is I hope this will be a particularly interesting and important one for the City Council and for the public. This is our presentation tonight. It will be made by Dawn Merks and her associate David Schnee, with Group 4 Architects and Research out of South San Francisco, who we have recently contracted with to perform some very, very exciting work for us to complete a facilitated public engagement process and to develop a conceptual design as the first step towards the actual realization of our dream for a new recreation center and aquatic center or swimming pool for this community to serve us long into the future. The presentation tonight will cover the activities that Group 4 has been contracted to perform, give you some sneak peeks at some of the visuals that will be used in that process to stimulate our imaginations and our participation in the public engagement process, and to give you an idea about the schedule. Again, we're hopeful that people who are seeing us at home, either tonight or in the days to come, take advantage of the information that you'll see tonight, and mark your calendars to watch for additional information about our stakeholder outreach and our public town hall meetings, which will be an important part of this process. So with that, I'd ask our team to walk through their presentation.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dawn Merkus, a principal at Group 4 Architecture. And with me tonight is David Schnee, also a principal and one of my partners at Group 4. We're really very excited to be presenting tonight kind of an overview of our work plan for the process and for the work that we're about to embark on. First, we'll start with quick introductions to the project team, and then give you a little bit more detail on the work plan and how we're going to accomplish the conceptual design, and then go in a little bit more depth on the proposed engagement and how we're going to engage the community, the stakeholders, advisory committee, and staff in designing our new recreation and aquatic center. So Group 4 is me and David and about 23 other people in our firm, right located in South San Francisco, some of which actually live in San Bruno and kids go to school here. Being a neighboring community, really consider you part of our community. BSW Architects, Stephen Springs, is an associate architectural firm that we have selected specifically for their expertise in aquatics and recreation facilities. So to bring about 40 years of their experience working on similar types of projects, similar size and scope to your project. Also working with us is George Dines from Councilman Hunsaker. Big part of their scope of work is going to be aquatics and recreational, market analysis, and operational. So that operational cost, revenue generation, looking at how we're going to operate a new facility, significantly different than the facility you currently have, and making sure that that's going to be sustainable as that moves forward for the city. And really pleased to have our architect, our landscape architect, Marco Esposito with SWA, also on our team. Group 4, I've been with them for over 30 years, and one of our first community center projects was actually the San Bruno Community Center, the one we're in here now. Super excited. Since some of those early projects, Group 4 has really expanded on our experience in community projects, from recreation centers to community centers, senior centers, libraries. We do them not just locally, all over the state, as well as nationally. Some of the ones you may be familiar with, Mitchell Park Center, West Sacramento, as well as San Leandro. And then BSW, as I mentioned, a huge 40-year resume of doing aquatics and recreation facilities and really bringing that expertise to your project. Very similar in scope and size. Some of their projects are shown here. And then Councilman Hunsaker, really bringing that kind of being able to vet what we're proposing in terms of space for operations. And that's really a key part of our work and key part of being informed as you make the decisions that we have in front of us. And so to present our work plan is David, and I'll be back for engagement.
Thank you, Dawn, and Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's a privilege to be here and to walk you through the work plan that we've developed with staff and a work plan that will really generate successful results. So the first aspect of it is that we're going to build upon the work that the community has done, particularly over this last year. Any of you participated in any meetings on this project over this past year or done surveys of the rest? Quite a few, and we want to, that has really laid an excellent foundation for the work that we're going to do now. This project scope at the right now is phase 1, conceptual design, and in that has 2 tasks, and I'll go through those shortly. And then phase 2 is the schematic design and construction, and is future phases and scope there. The bottom half of this work plan is all of those dots and shapes are the engagement plan that Dawn will continue and elaborate on after my description of the top tasks and their subtasks. So the first task we'll be doing is looking at the alternatives, the program alternatives. What should be here? We know we're going to have a recreation center and aquatic center, but there's lots of different components to those that we can have. The approach that we'll be taking is to have a foundational aspect so that we know that the core prerequisite spaces are here. You have wonderful facilities already. We're going to improve upon those as part of the base. But then we'll be working in the community engagement process to see which alternatives there can be to enhance that within the overall budget. We'll be, of course, then looking at site analysis and site alternatives. You have a beautiful, wonderful park here that is really at the heart and core of San Bruno. We have circulation and parking that we need to take care of, the facilities, the beautiful landscape. These will all be part of our process. Then we'll be looking at this early phase at building alternatives. How should we build the project? Should it be to the north side, to the south side? Should the facilities be combined? Should the existing recreation memorial building be reused, or is there any value that can provide? We'll be looking at all these alternatives. And of course, we have to work within the budget that has been established for it, but not just the capital budget for the bricks and mortar and the building and site costs and the equipment that goes into it to make modern 21st century buildings, but the operational costs are fundamental too, that over the life of the building you'll spend many times more on the operations than you will on the capital costs. And so this is a chart that just talks about looking at the different options from, on the left side, the operational cost, staff, the little figures there, and revenue too. The recreation center has the potential for it, and looking and evaluating options according to those 2 criteria. Then we'll be putting this together and analyzing these and looking at various alternatives, doing very accessible, community-driven analysis of the different criteria that we'll establish with this, with everyone's input, and we expect a strong alternative will emerge out of this good listening that we'll do and putting lots of good information in front of a very engaged community. So then with that direction that we'll get at the end of task 1, we go to task 2, which is to really develop the conceptual design. This will allow the plan and visual graphics of what it will look like. Early on in the process, we'll be getting what we call design values. in a community of this size or any size in public process, which we specialize in, it's not about what I like as the architect, it's not what any individual likes, but there are strong values of community engagement, of participation, of family, of education here in San Bruno. There are also design values too that we can talk about: a welcoming facility, one that honors the landscape, that is proud, and we'll hear from you what your values are, and we'll be developing that conceptual design package. And of course, with that, most importantly, will be to confirm and set the foundation for the final design phases and later construction, setting up a full comprehensive budget that's looking at all the construction factors and market factors, and making sure that this is a project that we can successfully deliver to the community who is so looking forward to it. So now Dawn will describe the different steps of participation.
Thank you, David. So community engagement, this is like once in a lifetime project. And so we want to make sure everybody in the community has a chance to be engaged and has a chance to participate in helping to develop this conceptual design. We are having 2 rounds of community participation. The first one will kick off in March. And in that first round of participation, we're going to cover program options. Those are the spaces within the building, architectural program, site and building diagram options, and design values. In round 2, which happens in May and June, that's when we actually really get to the different conceptual design options as architecture, as you know. And so that's where you'll see the plans, the massing models, materiality, and setting up sustainability. Is this project going to be environmentally friendly? Of course it is, but to what level and to what extent, those are all things that we need to have the discussion and dialogue with the community on to determine. The community meetings, we're going to have 3 formats. The first one will be the structured town hall meeting, kind of your traditional town hall meeting, and we'll be having that at the Veterans Memorial Recreation Center. In addition to that, we're doing community intercept kiosk, and there's some images here of the kiosk, and just by chance, when we met with Carrie and her staff, it was perfect timing for us to be at the Easter egg hunt at the park as well as at the community day for round 2. And so we're really hoping that that's a great opportunity for the community to engage with us, where we're out there where they are, not expecting them always to come to us, and being able to give us input on the outreach that we'll be doing then. In addition to that, also during these large periods of times, 3 to 4 weeks for each round, we'll be doing online surveys and iPad kiosks. So we'll set this up at the library, at the Veterans Memorial Center, where we actually have an iPad directly linked to the on-site survey so that the community members can fill it out at their leisure. We'll be doing flyers that will have links to all the community members to where they can go to the online survey, and really trying to promote engagement from the community, not just at the kiosk, at the structured town hall meeting, but also with the online survey. In addition to that, the public hearings that are on our work plan include your introduction to the project and the overview that we're giving you tonight. Next week, we'll actually be at the Park and Recreation Commission meeting, and then we'll see you again April 24th. We'll be having the different program options and site options for you, and then back again on June 26th with the conceptual design. In addition to Park and Rec next week, we'll also be there March 21st and May 16th. And then the Planning Commission is planned for April 17th. And these are all public meetings that the public is also welcome to attend. Additionally, at this first phase, just as we're developing this needs assessment for the project, really reaching out to the stakeholders and developing focus groups for the gym users, recreation providers, service providers, teens, San Bruno schools, and the community organizations. Advisory committee will also be established, and the advisory committee is really going to be the sounding board for all of the work that we'll be bringing to the public. All of our information will be vetted through this advisory committee, and will really play kind of a key role in helping to guide the project as it moves forward. technical meetings. We've already had our first technical meeting. Actually, we've had 2 with senior staff as well as recreation staff, and these are going to be meetings that are going to happen throughout the project and at regular intervals, and not just with park and recreation staff and senior staff, but planning, building, police, and fire, to make sure we're getting input early on so that we can mitigate any concerns and integrate all their good suggestions and ideas as well. And this is just a summary of some of the notes that we've already collected. But as you could see on the work plan, those are really integrated throughout the project. And so with that, we hope we didn't keep you too long in yet another presentation tonight, but hopefully you got a good sense of what we're proposing, and we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Questions from council?
Through the chair.
Irene.
Tell us about the advisory committee. How are you forming it, and what is their actual role?
So I can talk about their role, and I think maybe Connie might want to chime in here and suggest how it's going to be formed. So the role is really, as I suggested, it's for them to be our sounding board, to be able to preview information that we're developing for the outreach, for the project, the technical information. The advisory committee will have a lot more local knowledge than we do, even though we're right next door. Being able to bring an advisory committee on that's a nice cross-section of knowledge-based people really will make our information that much more effective, and that will be their role.
So this will be a similar process to the one that we used with the previous phase of work, where we were determining what community facility had the highest priority within San Bruno and the community facilitation around that topic. At this point, we are proposing to form that advisory committee out of staff from different most important technical specialties, probably Public Works, Community Services, and the City Manager's Office. And then I have spoken with the Mayor about the appointment of an ad hoc committee of 2 City Council members. We will be seeking, we've spoken with the Community Foundation about 2 members of that organization. As you know, and we haven't mentioned it yet, but I believe it's common knowledge that the Community Foundation has a very strong interest in this project, as they have designated or earmarked $50 million from the restitution funds under their control for this project. And representation from the the Parks and Recreation Commission. So it's, again, a very similar structure to the one we used in the previous round of public engagement.
Other questions from council? Well, thank you very much. We look forward to it. It's exciting.
Very exciting.
Item B, receive report and provide direction to staff on additional alternatives for intersection improvements on Susan Drive.
Please, Jimmy.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The item in front of you tonight is in regards to the intersection improvements on Susan Drive. Back on October 10th last year, we presented the results of the comprehensive traffic study completed by the traffic engineering firm TJKM that evaluated the existing conditions along Susan Drive and several potential enhancements to improve sight distance, reduce vehicle speeds, and enhance safety for all modes of traffic. 5 different alternatives were presented during the meeting. The first was to not do anything at the intersection, and the others were to add pavement markings with striped bulb outs and installing stop signs on these minor streets along Susan Drive. And one of the other options was to install concrete bulb outs at these intersections, and also to install raised intersections to reduce vehicle speeds. And the last one that we presented was to paint red curbs along Susan Drive near the intersection. So the estimated cost for each alternative was presented, and the cost ranged from approximately $18,000 to $587,000. So during the meeting, staff recommended the recommendations by TSPC for council's consideration, which is the installation of the concrete bulb-out improvements at the intersections. The estimated cost for that option was approximately $432,000. The council supported staff's and TSPC recommendation, but expressed concern about the high cost of the alternative and requested staff to develop and evaluate lower cost options for consideration. So we're here tonight to present additional options for council's consideration. All of these options consider several factors that included level of protections provided to the pedestrians, the effect on drainage, and ease of use for visually impaired pedestrians and cost. So the first alternative that we are presenting is similar to the one that was presented in the JKM recommendations, which is to use striping at the intersections. And although this option does not affect drainage, it provides the least amount of protection for pedestrians, and it will pose some challenge to visually impaired residents, as since the crosswalk will be closer to the intersections towards the street. There'll be no means of protection or to guide them into the crosswalk. So here's just some of the examples that we found online here. In San Francisco, they used some colored at the intersections for like type of a bulb out. And there's a picture that we found from New York at the intersections there. And the bottom one, that the striped kind of bulb out locations to deter cars from driving in that location. So, and that's something that that was one of the options that we're considering. The second option that we consider is to adding what's called channelizers. These are this flexible plastic posts about 2-inch in diameter and 3 feet tall, and this option provides some protection for pedestrians, but still pose some challenges to the visually impaired pedestrians. There's not a continuous detectable path for them, and this option will create some difficulties for street cleaning equipment. So here's just some options that we found online too at these intersections. So there's posts at these corners and colorful paving that's been placed there from Seattle into these two locations. So the third option that we are looking at is to include the striping and the what is called an asphalt dike or a concrete curb. These dike or curb is approximately maybe 6-inch high, similar to a freestanding curb or berm. And this option uses the dike to create some level of protection for the pedestrians. And the drainage will be impacted, but these breaks in the berms can be provided to allow for water to flow. This option also has some issues with maintenance, as trash may accumulate inside and street sweeping equipment may not be able to get into it to clean. So to show you some examples of what we found, show you this in Washington, D.C. So you can see that there's just concrete little berms areas that with channelizers installed. So the last option, and this is another type of a concrete berm that's placed on the intersection. So the last option is basically all of everything in one. So we're looking at striping, channelizers, and the AC berms. So have all three components placed into one alternative. So this is what we're currently recommending as an option to conclude. And all of the costs were evaluated. And the cost shown in the staff report, it's a bit low because it didn't include the striping improvements on Susan Drive and the replacement of the crosswalks with continental-style crosswalks and the installation of the stop signs on the minor streets. So once these additional costs were included, the cost is as follows. So we're ranging from about $23,000 to $71,000 in our options. So we're here tonight to seek council's further direction on these improvements, and there are no fiscal impact to this update. And this concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the report. Questions to staff?
Through the chair.
Please, Michael.
Good. So, can you talk a little bit about the overall concerns that we've had in the area, because it seems like we're focused a lot on pedestrian safety on the corners and site visibility, but I understood that there were some bigger issues with overall the speed on that, and I don't think that this addresses that at all. I've also heard concerns in that neighborhood about the parking, and it looks like this solution would minimize the loss of parking, but I don't see it addressing the speed issue. So was the study that was commissioned, did that focus on speed at all, or was it strictly about visibility at the intersections?
I can answer it though. So both were looked at. So the mainly was the site distance issue that was reviewed at the intersections because of an accident that happened in 2014, and also the way the intersections are configured. Towards the minor street, when the cars are approaching Susan Drive, they're unable to see the oncoming traffic. So there's slight distance issues at these intersections. One of the alternatives that was presented in the TJKM's report was to install raised intersections to reduce vehicle speeds, and that was included as part of the alternatives. Parking was also reviewed as part of the report. We were looking at removing, but with the red curbing alternative and without any bulb outs that was included, we're looking at about 30 parking spaces that were going to be removed as part of the alternative. And the remaining other alternatives looked at with a total of about 14 spaces that will be removed as part of those alternatives.
So with any of these alternatives, we lose 14 spaces.
Correct.
Right. But again, getting back to my original question, it really does nothing to address the speed of the cars that are going up and down Susan.
Not with these alternatives, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions from council? Marty?
Do we know yet exactly what we're getting? Is staff still deciding on the colors? Because I saw a lot of different colors up there, and I just wanted to have a better understanding of what we're approving, what we could approve tonight of those various options. Do we have a final design, or where are we with that?
We don't have a final design. It's mainly the concepts that we're presenting here tonight, because there's so many variations that we can do at these intersections, right? It really depends on the cost factor. So the alternative that we presented back on October 10th was to install the concrete bulb outs, which was the recommended alternative that the city, that the TSPC and staff actually was in favor of. Due to the cost of that, so these are the other types of different alternatives that we're presenting tonight, and it's a less cost-effective alternative. It may have the same effect as well as a concrete bulb out.
Right. I recall that. So if we were going to choose the largest one, combined everything, do we know the colors that you're going to be putting in there?
No, those colors are just an example of what other agencies have done. So we can select any colors we want, or we can choose to just put striping down at the intersections.
Okay.
Other questions? Council? Emery?
I'll try to talk through this process a little bit. So, and I want to follow up with Michael's questions because I had the same concern. So, the speed on Susan Drive is not going to be addressed in this process, in this solution, right? The speed on Susan Drive is a unique situation because you have going north and south on Susan, really no oncoming traffic from the right side. You've got sort of a free reign and vehicle speed. It's a tendency to speed. You can't, the traffic, it's my understanding the traffic, and staff can clarify if a request for a stop sign at those intersections were requested, but that was denied because there wasn't a need. And you can't install a stop sign when you're trying to control speed. Stop signs are installed due to crossing the street. No one's crossing Susan Drive. They're crossing a Jeffrey. They're crossing some of the other side streets. So crossing the intersection is not the issue. really what we're trying to address, and I think it's the main point, and that is vehicles exiting one of the side streets onto Susan Drive and ensuring their safety. A vehicle coming off of Susan Drive, coming onto that intersection. So if I'm at the intersection of Jeffrey Drive and Susan and I want to go out onto Susan, I'm trying to create a space for me to kind of come out a little further and have better view, and to add either the striping, the channelizers, the striping and the asphalt dikes. All those pieces hopefully increase my perception of being able to clear visibility. So striping, we all know, isn't going to make the answer, right? It's not going to prevent a vehicle from driving over those painted lines. I don't know the color is going to make a difference either. Might help, but I don't think it's really going to encourage it. Channelizers help identify that specific area by little bumps, but again, I don't think that's going to do it. I think if we're going to do anything, I think we really need to prevent the vehicles from driving into that specific area, and that you're going to need to do the dikes, some sort of raised concrete. Is it pretty? No, but safety is a concern. And I think it's a process, we go through this process. I think it's a unique situation in this neighborhood. But it's also something that I'm concerned about in other parts of San Bruno, so I don't want to do something that doesn't make sense. The $400 and something thousand makes no sense. We can't afford that in a city to go out and spend that kind of money at different intersections. I think this is a good cost-effective way to try to address the entering and exiting off of Susan Drive from one of those side streets. And so I'm thinking that we need to go at least include the dikes into that process.
Lorraine?
She said it all, what can I say?
Michael, please.
I do agree with her. I do have a concern about cleanliness up there, and I know we were talking, and some other people were talking about doing an adopt a storm drain, so maybe we could get people to adopt that area to keep it clean.
Michael.
So Jimmy, all the pictures that you showed us, they were all, none of those were residential areas. So, I mean, is it, I would imagine that this is pretty uncommon in a residential neighborhood. Those all look like big thoroughfares. And they all look like busy intersections where there probably would be a lot of pedestrian traffic, and something like this would make sense. But, I mean, have we seen this anywhere else in a residential neighborhood?
We were, have you, Michael?
Yeah.
I haven't actually, but yeah.
Michael.
So I think you're right in your observation about the photos that we showed, but it is not a situation where these are not used in residential neighborhoods. They do get used in residential neighborhoods as part of traffic calming.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do we really believe that had one of these solutions been in place at the time that motorcycle accident occurred, that it would have prevented it, or could have prevented it?
Well, I won't be able to answer that. It really depends on the driver at that moment. But I would think by having the crosswalks a little bit closer towards the street and allowing the driver to be able to approach the street a little bit further out, he'll be able to see the oncoming traffic. So that I can say that it'll improve the visibility of that intersection if the improvements are made.
Okay.
Marcia, please.
So it's hard to say if it would have stopped anything. You know, it's hard to prevent an accident. But the lawsuit was something that maybe the city attorney could probably shed some light on, where there wasn't anything out there, and the lawsuit was pushing for the city to be responsible for not having anything out there. So we're doing something to improve the safety. It will not solve the speed. Speed is something that you can't solve without doing the speed study and determining what the safe speed for that street would be. And Laura summed it up real well about how putting a stop sign isn't going to do anything for speed. So I was wondering if the city attorney could possibly just a little bit of information on the lawsuit and why the settlement was made for such a large amount of money?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. So I don't think we're here to re-debate what the cause of the accident was. I think all auto accidents often have multiple complicated causes, and the facts are unclear. In many of these cases, they were unclear in that case. We're also not here, I think, to speculate about whether these improvements would or would not have prevented that accident from occurring. I think the city's goal instead, in spending a great deal of time and money with all of these studies and investigations, has been to make each of those intersections onto Susan Drive, not just the one that was involved in the accident, but each of those intersections, as safe as possible, both for vehicles that are exiting those streets, as Councilmember Davis has indicated, onto Susan Drive, but also make it safer for the cars that are traversing so that on Susan, so that they can see those vehicles. And while maximizing the sight distance, also maximizing the amount of parking that's available, and stated another way, to minimize the loss of parking. So those were the goals of the city, and speed had been an issue before. You're right about that. That's been addressed in a number of ways over the years up there. There have been concerns about parking. There were concerns about sight distance, and that's the reason why we're here tonight. So I think it's important that the alternatives before you are really intended to make the entire area safer for vehicles on all of those side streets, pedestrians, and the vehicles on Susan Drive.
Okay, so this is obviously an item for receiving the report and giving direction to staff, which could be at any level or whatever we need to feel comfortable with to go back. Is there any thoughts from council on what direction they'd like to give to staff?
Through the chair?
Please,
Okay.
Michael.
I was just wondering if the members of the Traffic Safety and Pedestrian Committee have anything to add based on their observations? Residents from the neighborhood, anything to add?
John is saying no for the committee. Don, no. Tom, I'll go.
I will echo that the whole point and the whole reason behind our recommendation, the initial recommendation of the curbs, the bulb outs, was not to address speed. And we do understand that speeding on Susan Drive is a concern. We did recommend increased enforcement. There's really not a lot that can be done from an engineering perspective to address speed on Susan, at least not from the information that has been brought before us. Raised tables in the intersections and other quite expensive things might do the trick, but those were not the options brought before us. What we were asked to do was to, what you guys have been already saying, make these intersections safer by allowing the cars from the side street greater visibility. The other option that we had for doing that was a real super cheap option, which was to red zone as far down as necessary to ensure that a car stopping where the limit line is today can see adequately up and down the street. And that was going to remove dozens and dozens of more spaces. So that was not an option because of the parking crunch that's in that neighborhood. So that's why we're at where we are right now.
Thank you.
Well, one other thing, by bringing these bulb outs out to the traffic lane, from my understanding from other things that we've done, it would provide, at least just for the southbound traffic, a visual narrowing of the lanes, which we have seen to reduce speed in some areas, similar to what happens with the limit lines. So it would do nothing for northbound speed, but southbound speed might have a small benefit.
Tom, before you leave, Tom, so I know you guys have looked at a lot of different options, and you have the toolkit that you refer to occasionally. Anything else in the toolkit that you would recommend that could possibly help with reducing the speed?
Just the raised intersections.
That was the only thing that was out there.
That's it.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about, excuse me.
Did we mention putting a speed?
The speed signs?
Speed sign. I thought that might
That's,
have
I mean,
been discussed.
That's an option. Those have mixed effectiveness. Sometimes, especially on, sometimes we get people who actually see it as a challenge to see how high they can get the number. So you don't necessarily want that. I don't know if they would be effective here, and I think staff would be more qualified to answer that question than I.
If I could just insert here, the city attorney did remind me that some time ago, the city did take action to enhance the signage along Susan Drive, the speed signage. In addition to that, we do periodic enforcement, what do they call it? Enhanced enforcement, shall we say, extra eyes on speed issues. And this was, as council members may recall, Susan Drive was part of our recent speed study. And so it's not an issue that we have neglected or ignored. And as various individuals have said, speed is in many respects a ongoing management issue, which is very tough to address in a conclusive manner.
Is there anybody else from the public who wanted to speak, or please? Well, they're not going to be able to hear you or see you at home. Hey, it's your claim to fame, huh? Come on now.
Through the chair, if I may, while the gentleman is going to the microphone, there's one other important aspect of the design of the improvements for all of these intersections. It's not obvious unless you're out there, which I know many of you have been, but the actual geometry and elevations of each of those intersections is different. And the first thing that I noticed when I went out there and spent a lot of time at each of those intersections is how different the perspectives are from cars coming out of each of those roads. And so that's one of the reasons that necessitated a design that was proposed like this, so that you have a consistent design among all of those intersections, so you don't get so much visual clutter that each intersection is looking different, which isn't aesthetically pleasing either.
Please.
All these issues are very important. However, the biggest issue is the parking. The parking is what's causing the problems on the intersections, because the people are parking in the intersections. When you come down one of the streets, you can't see anything. The speed up there is horrendous. They lowered the speed limit down from 45 to 25, which simply meant the people coming down slowed down from 60 to 50. Now, I have to come out of my driveway daily. I narrowly miss getting hit on a daily basis. There are so many cars parked on the street that we can't see anything coming out of our driveway. We're in the middle of the block. And this has been going on for years. I've lost 3 cars up there because of speed. So, I mean, it's something that has to be addressed. The accident you're referring to, that was long overdue. Someone up there is going to get killed. It's got to be addressed. The speed is the biggest issue. Secondly, the parking. The apartments on the top of the hill said when they were building, and I went to one of the meetings, they were going to have underground parking. They were going to have ample parking for 200-300 cars. Never materialized. Now they tell the people if they have 2 cars, rather than pay an additional $200 for parking, park down Susan Drive. The day before, I was coming home. Guy's coming in with a truck to park in front of my house. I asked him, please don't do that because I have it parked there. He moved. Yesterday, I was gone for half an hour. His truck was right there. I put a note on his car, please don't park here. Park where you live. He came down, got in his truck, drove around the block, parked 2 houses up from me. This is an ongoing problem. We sit in our living room in the evening, and I hear cars going down the street. They have to be doing 60+ miles an hour. Someone's going to get killed. So it has to be addressed. Thank you.
For the record, is Mr. Downs, what street?
Susan Drive.
Well, it's for the record. So.
Susan Drive.
Thank you. Other comments?
Just one last one.
Please.
So my only concern with all of this is it only seems that we're making it safer for people to speed on there. and it almost doesn't address the real issue, which is the speed. And if we were able to control the speed, then all these other things would probably be unnecessary. So that's really my only concern with this. I think that the solutions that you proposed are very thoughtful, and I appreciate the fact that you guys went back and came back with cheaper solutions than what we saw last time, or what the last council saw last time. But it really still does seem that we need to do something about the speed. Now, I think on most of Susan Drive, on the non-populated side, that's all red curb. Is that correct? It's all
the east
on,
side,
on the Skyline side.
Skyline side. There's no parking along that side. Yeah.
So would there be any opportunity at any point there to allow parking on that side and effectively narrow the street? And
no, there's not enough width.
There's not enough width?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Barney. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking that the direction that we provide would, I would be in favor of option 4.
Any other thoughts from council for direction to staff? Irene?
Oh, I understand why we would want I would I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I had a cold and medication, and I'm kind of whatever. But anyway, striping and asphalt, concrete dikes, I think is enough to do what we need to do without adding the extra pieces to it, and it's a reasonable price. I understand what Councilman Salazar is saying about addressing the speed, but as the other gentleman said, it's about parking. So you can't, the option to red curb everything was given to us before, and there was complaints about that would take away all parking from everybody. We had options about controlling the speeding, which was horribly expensive. I think this will do what it should do, and then maybe we can address some kind of, I don't know what, parking permit maybe, or something like that up in that area, so that might help alleviate. The problem with parking permits is, again, enforcement. So there's no easy solution for any of this, but maybe some kind of combination will help. So I would suggest that we do number 3.
Laura?
I also have a concern, as Michael has stated, with the speed, and that we should do something. And I think, we're limited on our ability to what we can do. But I know that there's been recent improvements. I'd like to see if staff can go back and look at potentially other options for improving the lessening of the speed on Susan Drive. So I would like to make that as part of a recommendation, but I also am willing to accept item number 3, which is including the striping, the asphalt, and the dikes. In terms of parking, if you were attending a meeting here last week, you would hear it's not just on Susan that the parking is an issue, it's everywhere. Shelter Creek is an overflow of problems, lower parts of San Bruno are overflow of problems. But I guess I would ask the question is, I've heard that comment a few times, that the residents aren't parking at the complex because they don't want to pay for parking. So I don't know if staff has gone back to the complex to see, is there anything that they can do by offering more parking, number 1, and is that true that really residents aren't parking there? I mean, the reality of it is that, apartments were rented out or condos were sold for 2 bedrooms and 2 people live there, and nowadays it's 2, 4, and 6, and 8 families living in these places because they just simply can't afford it. So the parking that was available or provided when this development was built was adequate, but times are changing. Nobody can afford homes over $1 million. So I think that's a part of the problem as well. But anything that we can do from a staff point of view, by contacting, communicating, and ensuring that they're doing everything possible on their site, that they're utilizing the parking on their site to the best of their ability, that would be appreciative. And anything that staff can think of outside the box about trying to reduce speed, I think we should. I see a sign that says you're going 35 miles an hour on a 25. It makes me slow down, so I think there are people who do listen to that. I'm not sure what staff thinks in recommending that, but if we can spend some time and trying to improve the speed, I think I don't want to come back here talking about another incident that occurred, that we couldn't do more. So I'd like to see if we can do more about speed, and I'm willing to support item 3, which is striping asphalt dikes, concrete curb.
Michael, your option? Absolutely.
So Jimmy, the asphalt dike option, concrete curb, how permanent is that? If we decided that it's causing too much trouble with street sweeping or flooding or whatever, could we yank them out?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And in that case, then I'll go along with option 3.
Okay, so what I've heard is, correct me, council, I've heard 1 for option 4, 3 for option 3. I've also heard about trying to reach out to the complexes up there to check and communicate with their management as far as parking and concerns from the community and the neighborhood. I've also heard a comment from council as far as speed is still a concern that they'd like to have looked into, whether it's the speed sign that's on Crestmore or if there's some other options that can be looked at, but not to let that fall off the radar because there obviously seems to be a concern. Though we do know in the end, parking is what we hear, as Mr. Downs said, is that they're parking in areas, and unless we red zone it all, which we could, and it does prevent it, but then the neighborhood has to understand the parking will even be tighter. And I do know that those homes, fortunately, have, for the most part, a driveway for 2 vehicles and a garage for 2 vehicles. So there is parking upon the persons who are there in the complexes. That's probably another issue. I know that we've also learned in the parking permit aspect is that you can't prohibit an apartment dwelling, a unit up there, to say they can't get parking permits to park on Susan. You cannot tell them that they can't when others can in the residential area. So I don't know if that could help or not. Did I assess that fair from what I heard this evening from council? Does staff have direction?
We do. We'll proceed with option number 3.
3.
Sorry.
I forgot to ask you what your choice was.
We'll look at speed, and we'll make contact with there's actually 2 apartment complexes,
Correct.
I think, that are at issue here. We'll check in with both of them.
Thank you. Anything else, Jimmy? We're good. Next.
Item 9C, receive mid-year financial update report as of December 31st, 2017, and adopt resolution approving second quarter budget amendment for the 2017-18 operating and capital budget.
Well, this is what we've been waiting for this evening. Mr. O'Leary?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to review the mid-year financial update report as of December 31st, 2017. When I last addressed the Council in a quarterly report in November at the end of the first quarter, I did make the comment that the first quarter, while the data is real, it does not indicate any strong trend, and you could not rely on first quarter data to draw any real conclusions on the revenues and expenditures for the full year. I would just point out to the council that I think now at mid-year, I think we're beginning to see a solid trend, and more reliance can be made on this particular data. The other thing I would like to remind the council is that the mid-year financial update is important because this information does provide a foundation for your staff to begin the preparation of the 18-19 budget. So the mid-year report and the mid-year trend is an important indicator as we move forward with next year's budget. The brief summary shows the brief summary shows that actual revenues and expenditures through December 31st match expected amounts for the 6-month period at very close to 50% of the 17-18 totals. Total general fund revenues are projected at $43,600,000 with expenditures at a little under $45,200,000, the difference using fund balance to balance the 17-18 budget. Actual revenues to date amount to 45% of the budget rather than the 50% target at mid-year, which compares to 48% last year. In recent prior years, the city has received a redevelopment agency property tax payment from San Mateo County in late December. And this particular year, we received it in the first week of January. So it's $746,000 that would typically be shown in the mid-year that we didn't receive until the next week. So it was actually booked in January. So if that amount, as far as total revenues were concerned, if that $746,000 were included in the mid-year total, the percent received would be 47% rather than compared to 48% last year, just again indicating how close we are to the budget. In looking at, I'll just comment on a couple of the tax items. The property tax is the city's highest tax revenue resource, budgeted at $9.9 million. This year's budget is about $1 million greater than last year. Just so that you know, this classification, what I'm showing as property tax in your report, includes both property tax and property transfer tax. I have shown both of those as property tax. In the total, about 18% of the total is tax increment. The city is receiving that previously we had received through the redevelopment agency. So again, pointing out that a substantial amount of our property tax previously had been received by the redevelopment agency. Just point out that this is a benefit to the city's general fund. If you look back at the combined general fund and the redevelopment agency as far as activities to benefit city residents, the amount is compressed. It's actually less, but looking just at the general fund, there is a benefit. And again, if that $746,000 had been actually received and booked in late December, the property tax total would be very close to $4.8 million. Sales tax is the other area that I'd like to make a comment. Sales tax revenue is budgeted at $7.6 million, about 2% above last year's budget. Your report shows that 33% has been received this year compared to 37% last year. Revenues are about $268,000 behind last year. This arises really because there was a one-time audit adjustment by the State Board of Equalization of about $150,000 that the gap in some prior period had paid. That was an overpayment, and so we had received those funds. This transaction really doesn't have anything to do with us. It's between the State Board of Equalization and the gap, but it results in $150,000 that was previously paid being taken away from us in this last quarter. The balance of this reduction, just based on some amount of analysis, would just kind of indicate that, or would sort of reflect, I just want to point out, a slight decline that is occurring in what's called the general retail category of our sales tax, which is primarily department stores, is the biggest source of of general retail. Over the last 8 quarters, this particular category has seen a consistent 8-quarter drop, slight but consistent. And over that 8 quarters, it's about 8%. So that is an area of concern. I met with Muni Services this morning, that is our sales tax consultant, that gives us detailed analytical data on our sales tax. They have not changed our projection. I noted in the report that it's their belief that we're going to come very close at the end of the year to our budgeted amount. I would only share that their confidence has gone down slightly, but they're sticking with the projection. So, sales tax, I think, just briefly, I would mention, just in preparing the report, I just looked back 20 years when I first did the first sales tax analysis and did the first budget update. The top 10 sales tax generators in San Bruno are the exact same sales tax generators today. And just an indication that we haven't been able to develop new sources of what is a significant revenue source for us. Clearly, the amounts from these sources has gone up over a period of time, but there have not been a change or influx of new sales tax generators over that period. I would go if there's any question.
You're not done, are you?
No. No.
I didn't think so.
I just thought I'd stop talking for a minute.
Do you want Jim to finish, or do you want to ask questions?
Let's let him finish.
Let's let him finish? Okay. Jim, we'd love to have you finish.
Okay. I just have a, or I'm sorry, just on the revenues, I did want to mention that departmental revenues were up a total of $206,000, and the areas that saw the greatest increase were in police parking fines and fire permit fees. So those were the 2 areas of departmental revenues that were increased. Okay, now on expenditures in the general fund, I just wanted to mention general fund expenditures are at 50% of the budget halfway through the year, and that's compared with 49% last year. So again, relatively the same. 2 comments. The overall expenditures are increased in the first 6 months of the year because we did a prepayment of our PERS retirement obligation, which skews, we paid like a little under $2 million. We paid in July. They gave us a significant discount if we were able to do that. We saved about 8% on our obligation by prepaying it. And but so that throws a substantial large payment in the first half of the year that won't be repeated in the second year. So it's skewed, so that 50% is skewed a little bit higher. That expenditure that is higher is somewhat offset. I checked, and it appears among the general fund at least that there are 9 positions, there are 9 recruitments underway where there have been vacancies for a substantial amount of time of the first half of the year. So that will result in some salary savings. So the combination of those 2 would sort of indicate that the real dollar amount or percentage is probably 48 or 49% rather than the 50%. And again, we've talked about all of the restrictions and oversight of expenditures and the containment of expenditures that is an ongoing action on city staff's part. Just two other quick comments. One is the Enterprise and Internal Service Fund. The enterprise, and then I'll show in the next slide, Internal Service Fund revenues and expenditures are all very close to the projected amounts. I would mention on the self-insurance fund, we have expenditures of $1.6 million this year compared to 1.493 last year, a $173,000 increase. In my memo, I attributed that to two items. I think I was slightly exuberant and off in that statement. The real reason for the change is that our liability insurance premium through the ABAG plan increased in 17-18 compared to the prior year. There was a slight uptick in workers' comp claim costs, but that was really an insignificant part of the change. It was really the premium costs that had gone up. And then related to the budget amendment, this is the second quarter budget amendment. There are a number of items, but these all reflect actions that the City Council took during the quarter. You might note that for the budget amendments, we summarize items that the council has approved at various points in the quarter through staff reports and through actions that they take. They are all summarized. There may be additional amendments that we suggest and recommend in addition to those. This particular quarter, they are all based on prior actions the council has taken. I might point out at the last quarter, there was recommended, and the council gave us direction to defund and return the funding that had been approved for 3 capital projects in the stormwater fund, to defund those and to return the funds, to transfer them back to the general fund capital reserve. We have done that, and I just wanted to point out that after that action, the general fund capital reserve has a fund balance of about $500,000. $500,000 is the mid-year amount in the general fund capital reserve. Those are my comments, and would be glad to answer any questions the council has.
Marty had some question, and he's going to ask you to flip back a slide or a couple slides, please.
The business taxes were, it's at 82%. Is there a little information that you have on that? Why is it going to continue, or some kind of little crazy exchange happened?
Well, it's not crazy, but it is. Business license renewal is July 1st, and they become delinquent August 31st, or so people pay in the very first couple of months of the year for all the renewals. So the vast majority of our business license tax comes in early in the year. So that's why it's so high.
About how much was the insurance premium increase that was beyond what was anticipated?
$150,000. It's between $125,000 and $150,000.
And the last thing was for our stormwater capacity. I'm sorry, stormwater fund. It occurred to me the other day that one thing that we could attempt, and you can tell me, somebody here can tell me if it's right or wrong, of looking at a stormwater capacity charge. We currently have a water capacity charge, a wastewater capacity charge. And so the idea is that for new development, as they tie into our existing underfunded stormwater system, that how we could get some revenue from those new tie-ins to our system.
So our consensus is that we don't know whether it's not something in our collective familiarity that is something that is normally done, but we will definitely check into it.
Okay, so for the public, we have in the tens, if not low hundreds of millions of dollars of storm water projects that need to be done, that we don't have have very limited revenue source. So we have to start figuring that out and better start talking about it now than waiting for later, because it's going to get difficult to do what we want to do with the money that we have to make these fixes that are on their way. So looking at a stormwater capacity fee isn't going to solve the problem, but it's actually something that will reduce the overall cost if it's allowed.
I was just going to add, you raise a great point. I don't know what the answer would be. Obviously, one difference is the water and wastewater, there are meters, and it's meter related. When you get a new meter, there is the charge, which there's no meter on stormwater, so exactly legally how it would be done technically, but it's a great idea to look into.
Yeah, you basically look at the surface area, how pervious it is, and then how much of that contribution would be, and then where they're tying into and how long it would travel to wherever it outflows to the bay.
Michael?
Thank you. So, Jim, you got my interest when you were talking about us not having developed any new sales tax sources in so long. And I know we were expecting to have a hotel built, and that would have been a nice source of more TOT. But related to sales tax, do you think you could come back and give us some idea of where sales tax is growing? If it's shrinking in department store and retail, where is it growing? Is there an opportunity there to expand, I don't know, auto dealerships? I hear that's shrinking as well. So if there's an opportunity out there that could help us focus strategically on what types of businesses we may want to attract, I think that would be good information.
Muni Service, our sales tax consultant, does provide the finance department quite extensive detailed information. Some of it is confidential on a specific site consideration, but beyond that, in a more accumulated totals, there's a great deal of information, and I think there's a lot that could be provided with the council.
Thank you.
Robert, please.
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue. Unfunded liabilities, how does that show, or should it show in your overall updates?
I would say, in talking about unfunded liabilities for this city, there are two that are generally discussed among cities. That's the pension obligation through CalPERS and OPEB for other benefits. And the city of San Bruno has shown in the past liabilities on our financial statement on the CAFR for both of those. OPEB has gone away. Fortunately, there was the auditors found that, in fact, that the retiree health program was not a city benefit, and that was really last year's audit removed that from our financial statements. But the PERS unfunded liability still exists on our financial statements. The City Council, to this point, does not budget any aspect of the unfunded liability. The only place it appears is on our financial statements. So the answer to your question, as far as our budget is concerned and the budget update, the unfunded liability is not shown.
Any other questions?
I have one more.
Please.
Rico, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk a little bit, or hear a little bit about how our cable business is doing. I see here that our revenue is 43% of budget. We did increase our rates. So it's I think it's the reality that we're losing some customers from AT&T's aggressive attack on into our city for their new services. And I think this is a moment, again, to kind of, if we could, how many subscribers are we losing? What are we doing to work at that? And I understand at some point soon, hopefully, we'll have more information on what we're going to do to combat it and how we're going to figure out if we're going to join the fiber community or slowly have our cable system eaten up by fibers. Could we get maybe have some where we're going or how far along? I know we're at Shelter Creek. That's all in with 1,400 units. We approved 2 projects for fiber, and I understand Peninsula Place is nearly 70 to 80% installed. Could staff just give us a little information on that? And
Hold on, please. This is going off, I think, a little bit on the quarterly report, and unless there's something that you can report or something, City Manager?
Well, I was just going to suggest that we can provide information. I'm not sure that staff is prepared to jump up and give any kind of meaningful report on that tonight. I did receive some questions from a council member. I believe that was you. Is that correct? So we will provide that information, and as you've mentioned, we do have plans within the next approximately 30 days to provide a more comprehensive update as part of a regular agenda on fiber to the home, and we can include information about the overall situation with subscribers and with revenues system-wide as part of that presentation.
Okay.
And I might just mention that the budgeted revenues this year, as the report shows, are actually increased $500,000 from last year based on the rate increase that the council approved. The rate increase did become effective in August, so it's not 6 months at this point. And just comparing revenues received in the first 6 months, there is a small increase in the revenues. You said 43%, which is correct of the budget, but there is a trend of improvement compared to last year.
Okay, anything else? To staff. Okay, we have on the agenda, and it's to go ahead and adopt a resolution approving the second quarter budget amendment. Anybody would like to introduce?
I'll introduce.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Item D, receive oral report and review status of local emergency related to the truck collision at the senior center and continuing declaration of local emergency.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I have a report for you tonight that I hope you will, as I perceive, is very good news. And that is that we are rapidly nearing full completion of the damage repair and the related activities, particularly to the interior of this room, that are necessitated as a result of the full repair of the truck damage to the stage area of this building. Specifically, you may have noticed this evening that we are in process with completing repainting of the entire interior of this room. I hope you'll agree with me that it is looks not only fresh, but also makes a nice, clean statement, and will be a nice amenity to the building when it is finally completed. Beginning tomorrow, the next big project on the interior of this room towards completion is the replacement of the entire floor area in this room. Again, that work will begin tomorrow. It's expected to be completed on February 26th. Concurrently, their finish work on the interior and the exterior of the stage area will be being completed. So we're looking at approximately 2 weeks out from now. We should be at a point where we're really only dealing with any remaining punch list items for final closeout of the repair and upgrade, or it's not an upgrade project, a repair project. We are anticipating, as soon as the floor is completed, being able to relocate the senior noontime nutrition program back up here and resume full operation of this building, as we have been anxious to achieve since the accident in June of last year. Lastly, because this has been an ongoing monthly activity to provide an update on the status of the emergency declaration and the ensuing activities, we're anticipating that that emergency will be closed, and that this, I hope, will be the final such report. And we look forward to returning to the City Council shortly after the final completion of the project with your action by resolution to close out the project. And at that point, we'll be able to give you a complete status and financial overview of the project. Again, with respect to that financial overview, again, this project, the repair and the related activities are being funded fully by insurance. So this is not a project that has been reliant on out-of-pocket resources of the City of San Bruno. Thank you.
Questions to the City Manager regarding the Senior Center? Michael?
Connie, I heard a concern from somebody that the configuration of the stage may have changed as part of the reconstruction. Is there any truth to that? Do we know anything about how it was put back? Is it exactly the same as it used to be?
So I inquired of staff on that question. I heard that question earlier today. The answer, as far as we are aware, is no. There was no planned change to the configuration or the size of the stage area. What did change is the lift, the handicap lift that is a required part of the ADA accessibility to this building, and the lift that was previously installed and that was damaged in the accident is no longer compliant. So there were some changes in that side of the stage area to accommodate and facilitate the installation of a different kind of lift. But other than that, we can check further, but we're not aware of any specific changes, and in particular, nothing that would have changed the size of the overall stage area.
Okay. And since you brought up the lift, I also heard that it's going to be on the opposite side of the stage now?
Apparently that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would that cause any problems with emergency exiting? If it's, in an emergency, would people be able to exit just as easily say if a wheelchair had to get out quickly, I guess could go out this side of the building rather than out of the back door?
Yep. Can you come up? I'll just say that the project has been complete. This was one of the things at the early stages of the project that took a little bit of time to get the plans and specifications in order, was the ADA accessibility and the updates that have occurred in the code since this building was built. So I'm sure the director will tell you that it's been done in a fully compliant manner.
Correct. And the building officials has been involved with this project as well, and looking at ADA codes. If there was an emergency, the person can exit through the deck area, or come back in front of the stage and exit from the side door as well. It's still going to
So the deck is fully wheelchair compliant, no problems with the door width or anything. Okay. Thank you.
Just since you mentioned the deck, I would just encourage you to stop by the Senior Center someday in daylight and take a look. The deck was an unrelated project that has been constructed during the same time period that the changes, the repairs have been made to the damaged area. But I think, I hope you will find that our deck at the beautiful perimeter of this building is really, truly spectacular. The deck has been made with a product that has a long-term durability. There's some built-in benches, and the railing, I think, has made a really very nice amenity to this building.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time up here last Saturday, so.
Other questions? Staff? Okay.
Item 9E, approve design and adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Sposito Engineering, Inc. for the bus route pedestrian improvement project in the amount of $74,820, approving a construction contingency of $12,000 and a total budget in the amount of $98,320.
Jimmy?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. During the fiscal year 2009-2010, the city applied for a Lifeline Transportation Program grant from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and received approximately $450,000 for 3 separate projects. The first project was to purchase a replacement shuttle bus for the senior center, which was completed in 2012. The second was to modify the parking lot adjacent to the Lions Field in the vicinity of Bel Air Elementary School, and that project is coming forward to council in the next council meeting. The third project was the replacement of sidewalk curb ramps and new benches at various locations, and the city completed installation of 22 curb ramps along the routes leading to bus stops in 2011, but the remaining work for installation of the new benches had not been completed yet. And this bus route pedestrian improvements project is in front of you tonight, which is to enhance the area at the bus stops for members of the public who uses public transportation. This project has been delayed due to staff turnover within both Samtrans and the city. However, staff is in the process of completing these projects by summer of this year. Otherwise, the grants funds may be reallocated to another agency. This project will replace approximately 600 square feet of damaged sidewalk, adding 4 additional curb ramps and installing 10 new perforated metal benches. And the locations of the improvements are listed in the staff report. The city staff performed the design and coordinated with Samtrans on the project improvements, which were ultimately approved by the Director of Public Transportation from Samtrans. The city also advertised the project for bid in early December, and the city received 2 bids. The lowest bid was from Sposito Engineering in the amount of $74,820, which is about $12,000 or 15% lower than the engineer's estimate. And staff reviewed the bid documents and determined that the submitted bid is complete and accurate. And the firm has qualifications to complete the work, as they have done for other agencies such as Los Altos, Mountain View, and Alameda County. And as for the fiscal impact, the fiscal year 2017-22 includes a budget allocation of $201,600 for the project, with a carryover balance of approximately $139,000, which is sufficient to fund the entire project, which includes the 15% contingency for unforeseen conditions. So this concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question from council? Marty.
These are just benches and they're not the enclosures?
That's correct.
Okay. At Cherry and Sneath, there's a crosswalk that leads to a bus stop, I believe, on the north side of Sneath. And the crosswalk goes through a median. It's just one of the things that happens. It just leads right to the median. So somebody in a wheelchair, or even the pedestrians, have to go around the median to get to the other side of the street, outside the width of the crosswalk. So if you guys can take a look at that, and if there's some extra money in there to just go ahead and cut that out so that somebody in a wheelchair could easily get to the other side, that'd be great. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? If not, this item has a resolution for
I'll introduce
authorization.
the resolution. Oops.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Item 10, comments from council members. Receive oral report from Mayor Rico E. Medina on council member attendance at the recent League of California Cities New Mayor and City Council Member Academy held in Sacramento, California.
I'll make this somewhat brief, but what did occur is on January 17th through the 19th, council members Marty Medina, council member Irene O'Connell, Vice Mayor Laura Davis, and I went up to Sacramento to attend the New Mayors and Council Members Academy. And even though it says new, and yes, I realize I've been up here a little bit too, but the last time I went was 12 years ago. What encouraged me was something that Irene had said, was it's about the importance of getting the updates, best practices. Things evolve, things change, rules change, Brown Acts, rulings, stuff like that. And so what it also afforded us was an opportunity to meet with colleagues throughout the state to better understand what they are going through, what they're feeling, what challenges they may have. And again, like I said, we did do ethics training. We did go over about the Brown Act, activities on and planning on housing and current issues, finance training on ongoing revenue and the cost of services. So to me, it was very comprehensive, and I think what we found more interesting as well, because homeless was a question that we'd asked several of individuals from other areas about what they are encountering. How do they deal with it? What works, what doesn't? Oddly enough, I mean, one mayor, they have 300. So, and again, yes, they're a larger city than us, and again, it's throughout the state. But it was something that was systematic, that it is happening everywhere. And we are not alone in that issue. And nobody has the best answer, but they've tried different options and avenues. I found the conference, and I think my colleagues would say the same, as a value and a benefit, and hearing from others, as well as getting the training and updated best practices, which is important for us to keep fresh and understanding what goes on, and hearing from the lawyers on the ethics training, because laws have changed, rules have changed. And so for all of us to be in compliance, which we are required every 2 years to take ethics training and harassment training. The harassment training just started about a year or so ago. Huh? Well, that's not what they call it. So, but it is to prevent, but we have nothing to prevent, Robert. We don't do anything wrong, we're good. So, but it is a requirement that we are, as electeds, required to do that every 2 years. So anyway, I'll leave that on as far as the program, and I want to thank my colleagues who attended, because we take our own cars, pay our own tolls, pay our own gas. So, but we appreciate the city also facilitating that so that we can go and get educated. I have a couple items under council comments, but I certainly want to open it to the rest. Marty.
Thank you.
Please.
It was a great conference, and hearing about how other cities are struggling with way more homeless problems it's a serious problem. We need additional help for the people that can't find a way to improve their situation, and I'll leave it at that. There's an incredible story here in San Bruno of a teen undefeated 3 years in a row. This was a 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, undefeated Parkside girls basketball team. So they won the championship, and I wanted to acknowledge that because that's really an amazing feat to go 3 years in a row and not lose to your competition in the area. So congratulations to the Parkside 8th grade basketball team. The other thing is a personal note. Last Tuesday, I was honored to be accepted into the Lions Club. Former Vice Mayor Ibarra sponsored me, and I look forward to working with that great organization to continue providing the community service that they do for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I do have a few items I wanted to raise. So these are requests for information, but they are requests that I believe would require a good bit of staff time to develop, and so I thought it would be appropriate to bring it up here in the open forum so we could get concurrence from the council on digging into these. And the first one has to do with trees, and I know the trees have been a big concern. I heard a lot of tree concerns during my time out talking to neighbors, and I've seen some issues that have been brought to the council's attention. And I know that we're on a regular program of maintaining the trees, and I believe each section gets done every 3 or 4 years. And I wanted to get a little more information around whether or not 3 or 4 years is often enough to take care of the trees, especially certain species of trees like eucalyptus that do tend to grow a lot and make a lot of mess. It looks like we might be going into another drought year, and so then these issues become even more important. So I'd like to get some information on whether our program is adequate, and if it's not adequate, what it would cost to bring it up to par, and maybe look at some other options, including the possibility of removing some trees that that we just can't get to. The other thing was regarding our participation in Peninsula Clean Energy. We saw a report that Marty forwarded to us showing which cities are participating at the 100% clean energy level, and I noticed we weren't on that list, and I would like to see us be leaders in that and sort of set a standard for our residents. I know some residents are still unclear on what the program entails and whether or not they should go 100% or not. I think it is important for us to be leaders in that area. So if that's something that could be brought back for a decision, I would appreciate that. And then finally, related to our water meters, I also heard a lot of concerns about the anomalies in what people saw in their bills pre and post smart meter for water, and I was wondering if we could get some information on what data is available on these new systems, and what kind of reports we might be able to provide the residents to help them determine whether or not they have issues with their water use, and help them identify potential leaks. I know not a lot of people have gone to the website. It is available. I know they can go in and monitor it themselves, but since we do have the data, if we could be proactive in providing that information, I think that would be huge to a lot of people that maybe just aren't comfortable going to the internet and analyzing data. So that was it. Thank you.
So with you asking that for 3 items in regards to I'll say the tree trimming and what is the best practice, and is the program adequate? That was your first question. Is that fair? Is there other council members would like to see staff work on that and have that brought forward?
Well, I'm not quite clear about what part you need. We went through rather extensive analysis of the tree trimming, we did the contracting, we did, what our city team is doing, what the contractor is doing, how far behind we were. So are you asking to do even more than what we've already done?
No, what I'm asking for is an analysis on whether our program is adequate. And if it's not adequate, whether we should consider either increasing our funding for it or removing some of the trees that are just too problematic. But if you feel that it's been covered and if you think there's adequate information on there, I'll be happy to review it myself and see if I can't get the answers that I need.
Well, I'm comfortable not. I mean, we spent a lot of hours, and I know staff spent a lot of time doing that. I don't know if the rest of the council wants to hear it again.
Does staff have the reports or the information?
I have a comment.
Comments are great too.
Staff is working on a couple of things that we promised the city council as part of that previous discussion. Most importantly, I think, is the tree inventory that is assessing the urban forest and other trees owned and maintained or not by the city throughout the community. I think that work, which is scheduled to be done later this spring, will be a good basis for some further discussion by staff and by the city council. And I think we could meet your interest partway. I will tell you, though, that the whole issue of trees is a very broad topic. It is something that we may only be able to pose topics for you for further exploration, depending on the council's interest and, frankly, staff's analysis. And lastly, I would say that the work that we did previously, you mentioned the species eucalyptus, for example. I think we may be mixing and matching just a little bit the work that we did and the contracting that has been put into place, and that is, I can let you know, working out extremely well. The contractor has progressed well through the city with virtually no hiccups, and we are well on our way to be able to provide a more reliable, comprehensive process for addressing our 4-year tree cycle. What that program does not address, and which is is a much bigger, broader topic for potential conversation, is what are we doing? You mentioned the species eucalyptus. I'm not aware. It could be possible that we have some eucalyptus street trees. I think we don't, or we don't have a lot of them. The tree maintenance, pruning and pollarding, the 4-year program, is strictly related to street trees. That is a subset of the broader topic of trees. And so we'll be prepared to engage a conversation with the city council within the next few months that as a result of the tree inventory completion, that may, as the first level of effort, really only give you a number of topics that we want your guidance about exploring further.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that, and I think, I'll wait till we get to the point where we address that, and we can go from there. So, in that case, I will.
But thank you.
Yeah.
The next one you had was
one.
participation in the Peninsula Clean Energy. Obviously, Marty serves on that, so I don't know, is that something you would want to report back on, or?
I believe we got an informal report back when I originally asked about going to 100% clean energy, and it was a cost associated with that.
Okay.
To re-examine that cost would be, I think, beneficial to decide if that's worth it, and I think it's relatively a minor amount of time to do that.
Yeah,
possibly.
to my knowledge, staff doesn't have that information readily available, but I think it's a very easy, quick process to get it from the organization, and then we can provide that report
And then the budget
to the
comes
city
up,
council.
so if it wanted to be budget, if that was the consensus, but maybe at the budget time, that would be the appropriate thing, okay? And then last was the water meters, pre-post smart meters, what data and reports are available to residents, and some of them obviously felt there is a higher spike in the costs and what have you. I know there was, we were told when the meters went in that there was going to be some type of a difference. We were going to see that. The residents would see that.
Correct.
Is there anything that you're aware of that we have post?
So it's not a topic that I have explored, so I would like to take the time to get some information from staff. What we can certainly do is provide an informational report about what tools are available and how to access them for residents to monitor and manage their own water use. In order to analyze whether there's been anomalies or how those anomalies might be affecting customers generally or individual customers, I would just suggest it's probably a very, very significant work effort. So I would request a time to be able to consult with staff about what we could easily provide and then report back to the council on that.
Through the chair?
Yes, Irene.
Just for general information, and was fascinating, I inadvertently left a hose on overnight, but the next day there was a notice on my door from Public Works saying you have a water spike use, and you need to check to see why you have it. So I thought that was a very good and a very timely reminder of what was going on, or notice of what was going on. So I appreciated that.
Other council comments tonight?
I have a comment on the same request that's coming from Councilmember Salazar, and I'm not really clear either on what he's asking for because, I think all of us as residents should really be on, we all have water in San Bruno, and we should really look at what the feature is that the city is offering. But I guess a more specific question would be, how many residents actually use the feature? How many people are enrolled in your online program to understand water use and spike? But if you either have a smart meter or you don't have a smart meter, it's just water use. And so are you looking at understanding, has the water use decreased? I guess I'm not clear.
Well, we made a huge investment in a system that allows us to track the water usage. I mean, the meters had to be replaced, but we replaced them with a system that's a lot more expensive. And the real benefit in the new system is that it is not only more accurate, but it does track things at a very granular level. And there's a trend across government right now to make government data, openly available to the public. And so with this system, we actually have a wealth of data that we make it available, but I don't know that the average resident is able to make full use of the data because it's not information, it's only data until somebody interprets it, puts it in some kind of form that makes sense to them. It's something I do at work. We do a lot of work with open data and trying to find out how can we make this information useful. So it's not just a matter of opening the floodgate and saying, here's a bunch of numbers. It's about saying, here is something meaningful to the residents. So we've made the investment. The ratepayers are paying for it. So I'm trying to find a way to take that data and help them be informed consumers.
I will echo Councilmember O'Connell's comment about the leak issue in that a family member also had a leak, didn't know about it, and the very next day there was a door hanger. So I think the biggest asset we're going to get from those smart meters is to know about a leak right away. Not to know in 2 months because we get billed every 2 months, but to know about it right away. So that in itself can save residents thousands of dollars by knowing about a leak right away. And I think that's a big one. So I think specifically too, in terms of data, would be interesting to know how many customers are really enrolled in the online, how many people really access that, and how much has the increase in notification to the residents regarding leaks, because now they have this data more readily available. So I echo some of your comments, and I think that would be good information.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Marty.
I think it would be nice, not just the door hanger, but either a text that, hey, you've got a spike, or a phone call, because by the time you get the notice, if you're gone for the weekend, you're not going to know. So it's interesting that that data and the technology is available to better inform our residents, and hearing how that could be implemented would be a benefit.
Okay. Any council comments from you this evening?
No, thank you.
Irene? Okay, I just have a couple items. On the some ad hoc committees, as well as an item I was going to bring up. Michael, you had three. I just got one.
Sorry.
But no, this is fine. I'd like to ask staff, and I know we already spoke about it, but have a comprehensive proposal for council consideration and review on our purchasing policy. And not just about where the limits are, because, again, I always joke that when I was here, they were the same for every line, and things are not what they were back in those days for costs, but also beyond that scope in just the purchasing aspects that the departments do on the projects. And I'd like to see that, so that if we can do streamlining again and we can have actions taken faster than if we had to do some cleanup on the street and it goes to $25,001, we can't do it until we convene the city council, because nobody has the authority. So I think I want to see if we can bring that back for council's review and consideration. On subcommittees, there are some, I should say, ad hoc committees that are needed, three specifically. A garbage ad hoc committee, which, oddly enough, and I've certainly watched something on the news, so I was taken back, but it is to review the ecology strategy and the public customer outreach to address the growing need to prevent contamination of recycling. What I thought it meant when I saw it is I'm not rinsing out the container before I put it in the bin. That's not what ecology is saying. There's contaminations because if people are going to smaller bins, they are using the blue bin as a garbage can. So it contaminates it, and that means now loads are being returned from just not our community, and that obviously can add to problems as well as costs. With that same ad hoc committee, there's also to conduct the annual review of a ecology rate increase proposal. And again, as we know, we're already in a contract. It's very specific, but as you know, we annually do that where we meet and have that happen. And I'd like to ask if Michael and Marty would serve on that for both items. Okay. Next one is to the Rec Center and Pool Project Ad Hoc Committee, and that'll be meeting with Group 4 as the city manager kind of indicated. And I'd like to serve on that, and I'm asking Laura Davis if she would serve on that. And then on the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee, there's a quarterly meeting that's upcoming, and I know Irene has been a part of that and knows it well, and I'd like to have her on that, and I'd like to join her so that I can get up to speed and up to date with that, and since I haven't seen it. These ad hoc committee assignments are for these specific tasks, and they will meet as needed, and for a limited time on that particular topic. And once they've been completed, that work will be reported back here to the city council, and then that role will be discontinued since that ad hoc committee will no longer be necessary. Any questions? Okay. If not, then we're going to move into, we do have a closed session. It's public employee appointment, employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, City Clerk, and we are going to adjourn to the next regular City Council meeting. It will be held February 27, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center right here. Everybody have a good rest of your week.